Get out of your own way, overcoming self-defeating behavior, practical lessons for conquering procrastination, fear, envy, neediness, guilt, and more. Feeling sorry for yourself is today's lesson. Feeling sorry for yourself. Ojibwa poem. Sometimes I go about in pity for myself, and all the while a great wind is bearing me across the sky. Sometimes I go about in pity for myself, and all the while a great wind is bearing me across the sky. Pat Schroeder says this, and I quote, "You can't wring your hands and roll up your sleeves at the same time. You can't wring your hands and roll up your sleeves at the same time." Melinda had spent 7 years trying to make a difficult marriage succeed, only to see it shatter when her husband left her for another woman. 5 years later, she remained embittered. Despite my efforts to help her move in a positive direction, she spent most of her therapy sessions bemoaning her fate. She whined about how she had wasted the best years of her life, how she was forced to work at a dead-end job, how she was doomed to spend the rest of her life alone because no one wants a 40-year-old mother, and all the good men were either gay or married anyway, and on and on. Eudora Welty says this, and I quote, "The excursion is the same when you go looking for your sorrow as when you go looking for your joy." Wow. The excursion or the journey is the same when you go looking for your sorrow as when you go looking for your joy. Because she insisted on seeing it as half empty, Melinda's glass was getting drier and drier. She had convinced herself that it was impossible to be happy in her circumstances, and so, of course, she was miserable. It was only when she followed up on 2 suggestions that she was able to start turning things around. First, doing volunteer work at a battered women's shelter exposed her to troubles that made her own seem trivial by comparison. Second, at Divorce Anonymous, she met women who had bounced back from situations just like hers. They understood what she was going through, but would not put up with self-pity. She could not dismiss their advice with "easy for you to say," as she had with me and her married friends. Feeling sorry for oneself has become a common affliction. If it's not an abandoned woman like Melinda, it's a couple who can't have children, or a man who could have been a contender if only he'd gotten a break, or a worker who's been laid off. It's grown children of alcoholics and victims of child abuse, or people whose parents neglected them or overindulged them or failed at being role models or up and died on them. If it's not a childhood wound that brings on self-pity, it's a recent tragedy such as an illness, the death of a loved one, or a financial setback. In some cases, it's an unchangeable personal characteristic such as being fat or ugly or physically handicapped. Some people are chronic self-pitiers. They find new reasons to feel sorry for themselves whenever their circumstances change. You can recognize them because they start a lot of sentences with "if only." If only. As a temporary device, self-sorrow can be comforting. As with an animal licking its wounds, it gives us a way to soothe our pain. It can also distract us from more wrenching emotions such as grief or fear. And if we express it to others, self-pity can be a cry for help, a way to enlist sympathy, or a means of getting ourselves off the hook. People don't expect much from those they feel sorry for. But the benefits pale in comparison to the cost. For one thing, woe is me is not compatible with hope. Feeling sorry for yourself consumes energy that could be used to turn your life around. As long as you're stuck in the past, you can't figure out how to create a better future. And while it might be comforting to gain the sympathy of others, they will eventually grow weary and lose respect for you. Then they will either avoid you or become cold, perhaps even hostile, when they're with you. Self-pity feeds on itself. When you project a sorrowful image and a lack of faith, things tend to go wrong, which only gives you more reason to feel sorry for yourself. If the cycle continues long enough, you run the risk of appearing pathetic, and I mean absolutely pathetic. Lozao, the author of The Art of War, says this, and I quote, "Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." Let me repeat that again. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. If you fall into this self-defeating trap, the best hope is to seek out situations that will give you a new perspective. For example, spend time with people who are truly deserving of compassion. Ask a friend to tell you honestly whether it bothers him to hear you complain about your situation. Join a support group. You need to make a 180-degree shift from aggravation to appreciation. Everybody put that in the comments below. From aggravation to appreciation, from grumbling to gratitude. Otherwise, your half-empty glass will empty completely. Wow. Usable insight for today. If you keep feeling sorry for yourself, you'll really have a reason to be sorry. If you keep feeling sorry for yourself, you'll really have a reason to be sorry. And we're going to take some action today. Let's see what we're talking about here. Taking action. Point 1. Learn to recognize when you're feeling sorry for yourself. Learn to recognize when you're feeling sorry for yourself. Point 2. Realize that it's an enormous waste of time and energy and a drain on other people. Realize it's an enormous waste of time and energy and a drain on other people. We're talking about self-pity, which leads to self-destruction. Point 3. Do something for someone less fortunate than you. It not only makes you more aware of your own blessings, it makes you proud, and you can't feel pride and self-pity at the same time. Point 4. List all the things in your life you feel grateful for. List all the things in your life that you feel grateful for. Point 5. List everything that turned out better than you'd hoped. List everything that turned out better than you'd hoped. Point 6. Identify someone who helped you in your life and find a way to thank that person. Identify someone who helped you in your life and find a way to thank that person. And our last point. If the reason you feel sorry for yourself is something shared by others, join a support group. Look for one that supports efforts to get past the problem and move on, not one that reinforces feelings of helplessness. In solution-oriented groups, everybody put in console solutions. In solution-oriented groups, you will hear members not only sharing their pain, but discussing hopes and plans for the future. If you have trouble finding the right group, express your desire to others. You might attract people who share your wish to get beyond the problem. My, oh my, oh my. Feeling sorry for yourself. Get out of your own way. Overcoming self-defeating behavior. Practical lessons for conquering procrastination, fear, envy, neediness, guilt, and more, including self-pity, by authors Mark Goulston, MD, and Philip Goldberg.